We come to this place for magic. We come to the Bladtcast to laugh, to cry, occasionally be revolted, to pretend that you care. Because we need that, all of us. That indescribable feeling we get when the sound begins to prematurely dim, preserving that sacred runtime that is always measured in full minutes. And we go somewhere we've never been before. Not just entertained, but somehow reborn. Together. From musician interviews and unique movie reactions to stories about getting tossed off the Groove Cruise and rescued by the Canadian CIA. Dazzling conversation on tiny earbuds that repeatedly fall out, or a huge pair of Beats by Dre that never fit, but you spent $200 on them, so you wear them anyway. Sound we all can feel. Somehow, heartbreak feels good in a place like this. Our hosts feel like the best part of us, and stories feel perfect and powerful. If you feel like you're part of the episode, it's because here you are. The Bladtcast. We make podcasts better.
Welcome to the Bladtcast Oscar Night Recap Extravaganza, presided over by Christian Blatt. And the winner is you! Get ready for your host, Christian Blatt.
Oh my goodness. Thank you to our friend Farad Muhammad with the big intro there. And of course, my pal Katie Hampton, as always, doing her best Nicole Kidman impression. I figured we had to dust that one off for Oscar night. And now you might be thinking, look at this guy. Why is he overdressed? I don't believe I've ever worn a tie on my podcast before. I don't wear a tie very often. Usually if you see me like this, it's probably because I'm going to a funeral, maybe a day in court. I would say a job interview, but I haven't had one of those where I felt like I needed to wear a tie in a long time. But the simple fact is, this is our big Oscar night show, our big Oscar day after show really is what it's turned into. And we've been doing it for years. And I'm excited to keep the tradition alive. And the reason why I, at the last minute, figured I got to look halfway decent, because our first and as of the moment only guest, as the others are running late, is from Once Over with Kaylee. And some people know her as Lucy Typebox from Who Are These Podcasts. Kaylee, you were dressed to the nines in your Oscar finest. So I figured, oh my gosh, I have to at least put myself at whatever like 100% is for me, which is like 20% measured up. But thank you for making me look respectable for a change.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I never have gotten dressed up for the Oscars, and I was like, well, I have to get dressed up for Christian. It's the Oscar night at the Bladtcast. Now's the time. I'm excited to have an excuse to wear this dress.
Yes, no, exactly. And I'll brag for a moment. I've attended 4 Emmy Awards, one for each network, because my wife worked on a show that was nominated. And I rented a tux all 4 times. And so I don't have the tux, because if I'd bought it, I could have popped into it right now. But at the same time, if I'd bought it, the last one I went to was 10 years ago. I wouldn't fit into it anymore.
Yeah.
And so
I almost thought that I was going to have to wear one of my old wedding dresses, but then I remembered that I had this little number. So,
well, I went to the Emmys 4 times. Did you have 4 weddings, or am I thinking of Hugh Grant?
I wish. No, only 2 for me. Maybe
right.
one day 4.
Hey, still time. Still time.
I'm trying to beat Liz Taylor. That's the goal.
And oddly enough, your last one will also be to Larry Fortensky. Anyway, the goal here is to present our finest, but also to shame one of our regular panelists, Eric Connor, in a sharp button-down shirt. But
I can dress up. I'm happy to go off camera, get spiffy up, and come right back.
I don't know if it's worth it, but if you feel like you can impress our audience, I invite you to do that.
I'll be back in 21 seconds.
Oh my gosh. So now
I wish I could get changed in 21 seconds.
Well,
oh my God.
You saw Eric. I mean, what's the best? How much better is he going to look than that? Now, regular longtime viewers and listeners to the Bladtcast know I usually do this show with Christian Toto from Hollywood and Toto. And he wrote to me. He wrote back to me and he said, I've been dreading this email. I'm going on vacation with my family, so I won't be able to do it this year. And I'm like, no worries. That's fine. And just remember that in the back of your mind, that Christian Toto told me he would be on vacation with his family, and that's why he was unable to do this. But for now, coming back is so you put on a nice hat and a sports coat. So
I love it.
Is that
Oscar ready?
Is that Pharrell's hat that Ellen DeGeneres passed around at the Oscars in 2014, asking people to chip in for the pizza she'd bought?
It still smells of DeGeneres and pizza. So yes, it is.
yes, it is. Well,
hello, Kaylee, by the way. Hello, Mr. Blatt. Happy post-Oscar Monday.
By the way, Ultra Liger says I'm here for Kaylee. Who isn't? I mean, come on.
Ultra Liger.
Although Sam Bibley does say Christian Blatt where it's at. And we appreciate that. And Sam does point out that was 42 seconds, so he's going to allow it. It was still pretty fast. That was a very fast, quick change. So there's a lot to talk about in terms of the films nominated, the films that won, some of the films that lost, and we want to talk about the Oscar telecast in general. Not only did I want to have Kaylee on because she would dress up for this show, but I know that long before all the accolades started pouring in, you were a big proponent of Sean Baker's Anora. And take a moment and talk about why that film connected with you.
You know, I think that Sean Baker has this absolute innate ability to connect with humanity in ways that most people don't. He has a way of pulling from some of the deepest and weirdest groups of people and being able to showcase all of their innate abilities on screen. I feel deeply connected with his characters. I feel deeply connected with all of the choices that he makes. And I feel like I get immersed into a movie, or I feel like I get immersed into everything that he does whenever I'm watching one of his movies. And Anora was no exception to that. In fact, I think that he's honed his talent even more. I was a big fan of his Tangerine. I'm a huge fan of his The Florida Project. But I think that Anora took it to an entirely different level. There were no characters in it that I didn't believe every moment of who they were.
Yeah, you and I have talked a little bit about that movie, and I do feel like the guy, the husband, he, for me personally, it was a little bit of the weak link. I think as the movie went along, I think he started out perfectly, but I did love seeing him kind of clowning around there at the awards, just laughing and really taking it all in. But, so this film won 3 of the 4 awards it was nominated for. Screenplay, directing, and Mikey Madison for actress. But I wanted to give you a moment to talk about what didn't win, because I know how you felt about that.
That is very true. So I will go ahead and say I don't care about the Oscars at all. I have never cared about the Oscars. I am not an award ceremony person. Despite the fact that I'm very fancy right now, I'm dressed for you, not for the Oscars.
I appreciate that.
I am not. This is just something that for me, when it comes to filmmaking, I tend to think that award ceremonies don't get it right. And I really, truly believed that this year the Oscars were going to get it right by giving Yura Boriskov the award for Best Supporting Actor for his role as Igor in Anora, and they did not. And I think that that is a travesty, and I'm very upset about it. I'm extremely, extremely upset. It was heartbreaking. It was the only thing that I cared about. I was waiting for it. I wanted it so bad. And I was heartbroken, and so I'll probably never watch the Oscars ever again.
So yeah, it was one and done for you. For me, when I think that the year that Pulp Fiction didn't win and Forrest Gump did, I was like, all right, this isn't really for me, is it? And that's 30 plus years ago now. The husband in the film, the actor who plays him is Mark Edelstein, I guess is how you
Yes.
say his name. And there is some charming video of him at one of the after parties that the Russian dance hit by these two young teen girls called Tattoo is playing here. So only our visual audience is going to be able to enjoy his dance moves. Eric, I think I saw you making those same moves at your son's bar mitzvah only 1 year ago.
Probably in this hat too. Actually, it would have been the right time, the right place, and the right moves, which is all I'm looking for in any given day.
So I think he needs to do more of this is what I'm thinking. Now, obviously, I know that was disappointing for you. And, that is a character in the movie, Igor. It starts kind of slow and you're like, oh, okay, I think we're really getting to understand this guy. And I do believe that he really does carry his own. Now, did you see a real pain with Kieran Culkin?
I did. And I do just want to correct you because I feel so passionately about this. It wasn't a disappointment for me that Yuri Boriskov didn't get that award. It was devastating. I feel devastated. I feel like that award was ripped out of my hands.
Yeah.
He deserved it so much. And I did see A Real Pain. And one, I was not a huge fan of it in any way, shape, or form. And two, despite the fact that Kieran Culkin was the standout of that movie, I think he definitely deserves accolades. I'm not trying to criticize him. He just was not even close to as good as Yuri Boriskov was.
Right. And I would say about A Real Pain, I think Jesse Eisenberg's performance was a little too understated. He needed a director who could have really pulled it out of him. But unfortunately, the director of that film was Jesse Eisenberg.
Do you know what the craziest part about the fact that he directed that movie, that Jesse Eisenberg directed A Real Pain is? Jesse Eisenberg wrote and then directed a scene about how he has nice feet. And that is oddly narcissistic.
Well, I think
Tarantino at least points his eye and gaze towards other people's feet.
He wants Margot Robbie's feet. He doesn't want his own feet. By the way, Ultra Liger says that's what it would look like if I attempted to dance. So thank you, Ultra Liger.
Proof.
And sorry, Sam Bibley says, I was chatting with a woman on Hinge when Anora was in theaters, and I asked if she wanted to go see it, and she unmatched immediately.
She's crazy.
Dave D, I would have accepted Edward Norton for Best Supporting. I would not. I was not crazy about his Pete Seeger performance because it felt like it was mostly prosthetics. He was fine, but I was very distracted by what he looked like. I think that has more to do with my thoughts on a Complete Unknown, which I know that our buddy Liam has very strong feelings about. So in any case, Kaylee, you're able to be happy for Sean Baker, for people associated with the movie, but and I'm sorry, what's the actor's name who played Igor? I know you've said it a couple times.
Yuri Boriskov.
Yeah,
he's my new favorite actor. I'm in love with him. I'm like in a non-romantic way in love with him forever. He is wonderful, and I just adore him, and I think he's great.
Right,
I want him to do amazing things.
Exactly, and hopefully he does get the chance to do amazing things. One of the things that I isolated a very small snippet from. This is Sean Baker's first acceptance, which is for original screenplay. He said something that honestly should probably be said at every award show in Hollywood.
To thank the sex worker community. They have...
He goes on and he makes a great point about it. But I mean, just think where Hollywood would be without the sex worker community, So, but obviously... just in terms of his films and the subjects that he's focused on, and this one in particular, I think he made a great point about that. I also liked what he had to say about people should really go see movies in the theater. And Eric being someone who I regularly see movies in the theater with, and Liam as well. Kaylee, you live too far away. Otherwise, we'd add you to our AMC entourage, where we all take turns making reservations together.
We go steady. That's basically our most committed relationship. Both Christian and I, even though we have spouses, we're each other's arm candy.
I love that.
Yeah, and I think it's also too like I did not see Anora in the theaters. And I wish I had. I mean, it was definitely one of those movies where seeing it on the small screen brought its own kind of charms, particularly your new spiritual boyfriend's performance, which was stunning. And I found myself watching him so much. And by the way, one thing about him too, the very definition of the supporting performance that came up with both Zoe Saldana and of course Kieran Culkin, where it's like, are they supporting? I mean, I know Hollywood does this a lot. They've done it with the Academy Awards and the Emmys. Who's lead, who's supporting. The most egregious in my mind still to this day, Jamie Foxx nominated for Best Supporting Actor for I'm sorry, it wasn't Ray. It was the movie he did with Tom Cruise. Collateral, thank you. Yeah. And he's fantastic in that film, but he's in every second. There was nothing supporting about that performance. And I think Kieran Culkin, you could make that argument. It's really him and Jesse Eisenberg. They're both leads. And so I think part of this too is because they were like, oh, we stand a better chance in the supporting category. They put him there. But I think one thing about the wonderful character of Igor is he is the very definition of supporting, and he barely speaks. For like half the film, he is silent and is riveting.
He barely speaks within the first 10 seconds of him appearing on the screen. He like looked down and then looked up. He's sitting in the room with Anora and he's like looking around the room a little bit. And within that first 5 seconds, I paused the movie sitting at home watching it and said, that's the best actor that I've ever seen in my life. And as the movie continued on, I was like, I usually don't recognize good acting talent. And he was so hit me in the face with it that I had to pause the movie to be excited about it.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think that I have an issue with Anora that I'll talk about in a moment, but it was indisputable for me that Mikey Madison was phenomenal in it. I just thought like that's what makes that movie. Similarly, when we talk about The Brutalist, Adrian Brody makes that movie. He makes it for a long time because it's 3 hours and 35 minutes, which we'll talk about that one in a little bit. But my one issue with that movie is, and Sean Baker won for editing, and he talked about that he found the film in the editing room. I wish he could have found a few minutes to take out when they're looking for him for the husband character. It's just they go like one place too many, maybe even two places too many. And I was like, all right, let's move it along and get back to the story. I'm not overly critical, but I was just in the moment. I'm like, okay, so where is he? We know where he is. Can we just get there? And I want to just piggyback on what I said to Dave D. He said, watch how the real Pete Seeger talks. I think Norton nailed it. Passive, quiet, folky old man. My thought on that is those are those performances that feel like, oh, it's a great like modern day SNL impression when they have the prosthetics and they've studied the tape and they sound like them. I'm like, great. I don't know. I think it's more of a thing about that movie in particular. And Ultra Liger, you probably speak for a lot of people in the chat, a lot of subscribers to this channel, the Bladtcast. Only way I'm watching a 3-hour movie if it's filled with hobbits is. So
well, Bladtcast, I'm saying Bladtcast, The Brutalist, based loosely on the life of Christian Blatt.
Yeah. Brutalist, the Brutalist and the Bladtcast usually average 3 hours and 35 minutes. It's true.
Yeah, it had many hobbits in it. You just have to go and you'll see they show up just in the end credits, but just stick around for 3.5 hours. I promise they're there.
Yeah, no, exactly. Eric, I wanted to, so you've seen Anora, you mentioned, you saw it at home. And it's funny because it's one of the only movies that my wife felt like, she's like, okay, that one I want to see. We had a link to it. We had gotten a physical DVD from the Writers Guild, and Sean Baker, I'll clip this and send it to you. She said, I'd really like to see this one in the theater. It's like, because we need to get away, because we had a link to Complete Unknown for like 3 months. We had a link to it before it came out. We only just watched it within the last week. So actually going out and seeing it. But Eric, you watched it at home, and Sean Baker cries a little inside, but he's glad you saw it, I'm sure. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, and I had a Film Independent link, and I let it expire. So similar to you, I was sitting on this forever, and finally I was like, well, I got to watch this one. And I haven't watched that much of Sean Baker's stuff, but I've always followed his career and been fascinated by him. I also love, and Kaylee, correct me if I'm wrong, he like makes movies out of like Florida, right? I mean, that seemed to be like a hub for him. And I'm a huge fan. That used to be a thing, the sort of regional filmmakers. And you occasionally get that again now, I think, with more of a global audience. But for me, watching Anora kind of late in the game, it was already getting a fair amount of buzz. But the thing that is really special about it, and I was even talking to my son about like why this won Best Picture. I said, well, people in the Academy fell in love with it, which I know sounds simplistic, but I think what happens is there's the movies that the Academy like respects, and feels like they should give an award to, and I'll put English Patient right on that list. Because it is a classic sort of traditional old school Hollywood film from the late 90s, but it really harkened back to like an older style of Hollywood filmmaking. But I don't know how many people loved that film, but I think Anora, Coda, these are movies that like people, or even Parasite, people just fell in love with. And you can't underestimate the power of that, like when it comes to the Academy voters. Like they find the movie that they connect with. And I think that over the more recent years, it's how we get movies like Everything Everywhere All at Once that you never would have imagined could win an Oscar, wins an Oscar because like you were saying before, Kaylee, people connect with it. Like they feel seen in their own way when they look at a movie that's as personal as Anora, or even the other side of personal as Coda, and I think I could see why. And I was a huge fan of The Brutalist, with or without hobbits. But in the end of it all, like it didn't stir as much emotion in me as Anora did. Or even a movie that wasn't nominated, I thought was great, Thelma, which I thought was so sweet and so wonderful. And I think there is something to be said for period film, epic film, $6 million budget film. Doesn't matter. In the end of it all, do we connect with it at all? And Nora definitely got the prize for really connecting with people, including the lead actress who deservedly got her Oscar, with all due peace and love to what Demi Moore did.
Well, yeah.
Mike
By the way,
Madsen did more.
Thelma and Louise wasn't. Thelma wasn't a prequel to Thelma and Louise. I didn't realize that. That's why
Or
I
a sequel.
didn't see it. Yeah. Well, the sequel.
The car lands and Louise dies.
And what you were talking about in terms of The English Patient, it being one of those movies that you see and you feel like this is a movie that's going to be nominated. I was talking to our buddy Liam McEneany about Conclave, and Conclave kind of feels like one of those movies too. One of those ones that Liam, I think you said 30 years ago that movie would have won Best Picture.
Well, especially starring Ray Fiennes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's structured a lot actually like The Crying Game, with kind of like the prestige acting, the surprise twist at the end. It reminded me a lot of The Crying Game, which got a lot of buzz. And Conclave, I felt like got a lot of similar buzz, actually, I was surprised that there was a surprise because I didn't read anything that mentioned it.
Yeah, no, that's
sorry I'm late. I heard, Christian, you started this with a 10-minute sex scene, and I'm so bummed that I missed it.
Well, the worst part of it is that no one else was here. By the way, Dave,
check it out on Rumble.
Refers to how this show is, of course, the Bladtcast.
Yes.
Now, we'll talk about Conclave a little later. We're specifically focused on Anora, one, because it was the big winner, but also because I specifically asked Kaylee to come on because I knew that she felt so strongly about it. But Liam, I wanted to give you a chance to share your thoughts on Anora.
Well, as someone who is trying to get something together right now and get a little bit of money to do it, it's really heartening to see someone like Sean Baker, who has kept it in his entire career and has never worked with a big budget. In fact, I was reading this super depressing interview he gave where he said, "This is my second go round with with award season, and the first time I ever made money directing was when I directed some commercials this year." And I was like, wow, that is sad, right? Because like that guy did Tangerine. I mean, he's done like a lot of stuff that has gotten a lot of interest and attention, but so it's nice to see like a guy who keeps it indie and really just follows his passion and does not follow the commercial trends win it all. Like historically win it all.
Right. Yeah. And, we were talking about him in his Best Picture. No, it was, the director acceptance, where he was talking about how people should see movies in the theater. And we made Kaylee very jealous that she's not part of our AMC entourage, where Eric, Liam, and I don't even know. We saw The Monkey the other night, which, Kaylee, by the way, if you haven't seen The Monkey yet, that is definitely a you movie. You will love The Monkey.
Trucker Andy's been trying to get me to go see it with him, but I think he finally saw it without me. I'm dying to see it.
Yeah, I think that we'll be talking about that next year when we talk about the Oscars. We'll be talking about The Monkey.
Really?
I think. No.
But Kaylee,
we'll be talking about that, but it doesn't mean others will.
The Academy won't, but we'll talk about it.
It was hilarious.
I was like, oh my God. Okay, so I like to know nothing about movies going into them. So I believed you hook, line, and sinker there. I was like, oh wow, it's actually a good movie. I thought
it's a lot of fun.
It's so fun.
Yeah.
By the way, I am going to say that after credit sequence turned out it was a trailer for Osgood Perkins' next movie.
Yes.
Which you have to admire the balls on a guy to just do that.
And we were reading so deep into it too, and we won't say why or how. We thought it was connected to the movie.
Yeah,
just a trailer.
Yeah.
It's fucking confusing as shit.
Ultra Lager with an important question. Was he a brass monkey, that funky monkey? I would say that the Monkey and the Monkey is very funky. So you'll have to see it.
But Kaylee, I'm sorry I took your turn talking about Anora. I apologize.
Oh, no, I have said plenty of words. I can always say more about Anora. I do want to say something interesting before you guys jump into other movies, which I will probably excuse myself for so I don't hear any spoilers. But a thing that I learned, Christian, you might remember that I recently told you that I had just watched Mysterious Skin.
Yes, I do remember you had told me that, yeah.
So the star of Mysterious Skin that is not Joseph Gordon-Levitt is the guy who directed The Brutalist.
So he's the star of that movie.
Yes.
Yeah. And I had no idea. Like, I just watched that movie and it blew my mind.
He was in 13 also, right?
Sorry, what?
I think he was also in 13.
Oh, you know what? That makes sense.
Yeah.
He does look like the guy from 13.
Well, it would make sense because apparently he is. So, and I'm sorry, what was that movie? I know you just said what it was, but you had been talking.
Mysterious Skin.
Mysterious
Don't watch
Skin.
it. It's the saddest movie you'll ever. Watch it. It's absolutely incredible. It's one of the best movies I've ever seen. You will only ever want to watch it once.
Kaylee, I know that you saw this movie, and one of the other movies you saw is The Substance, which is actually one that I didn't see. I just kind of ran out of time for it. And I'm going to give credit to my friend Roxy Stryer, who some of you know because she's been on this show over the years. She did make the point that she was, the way you are for Anora, she was about The Substance. Yeah. And she was just commenting that she cannot believe that The Substance was enacted in real life when she watched this 25-year-old girl take an award that she could very well have won. And we love Demi Moore. It might be a minute before she gets a chance again. And I thought I'm intrigued by that movie. I have wanted to see it for a while. But it's sort of like in the in-between thing where it's not on a streaming service. It's not in many theaters anymore. So I would have to pay to stream it. And I think that's where I draw the line. But I don't know if Eric's seen it, but I'd like Kaylee for you to at least talk a little bit about what was great about that movie and if you felt that at all for Demi Moore not winning.
Okay, so until I saw Anora, I was wholeheartedly all about The Substance, and they are two very different movies, and I feel like it's comparing apples to oranges, which is perhaps the reason that I don't really like award ceremonies to begin with, because I can like both of those movies equally and, want them both to be happy and both to be winners because I love them both and they're just so wonderful.
Why doesn't the Academy do participation trophies? I know what you're saying. Yes.
What a great movie. I loved The Substance. I thought that it was stunningly beautiful. The commentary in it is very interesting, especially as an aging woman. There is a lot of really interesting social commentary that's happening. People saw it as a very feminist movie. I did not see it as a feminist movie at all. I saw it much more as a critique of Hollywood than I did about gender issues whatsoever. I think that you could have flip-flopped some gender roles and it would have been equally interesting. And I think a lot of people aren't really talking about that. Demi Moore was outstanding. She was outstanding. I if I could give everybody the award, I would give everybody the award.
Yeah.
But but Mikey Madison deserved it 50 times more than Demi Moore did. Demi Moore did a great job of playing an aging woman in Hollywood, and she is an aging woman in Hollywood. Mikey Madison, I did not recognize her from her other movies when she first was on the screen. I literally thought that Sean Baker, who is infamous for casting people who are not actually actors, had just gone to a strip club and found her. I had no idea that she was not a stripper.
Yeah, no, I know, and I think that I only have seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I think that's the only thing that I've seen her in. And by the way, just to the point, Kaylee, that obviously it is a very sexist industry and a sexist world. I meant to leave you in this layout while we were talking, and I forgot to do it. When I asked you about the substance, this is how I wanted to position the screen. I should have, because I think it would have distracted from the point you were trying to make, which would have been the point I was trying to make, which isn't really nice. Liam, did you see the substance?
I did not see the substance, but that's not going to stop me from giving a hot take.
Please, those are the only takes allowed here on this show.
Which is, this was a year where there were a lot of very good movies, but there was no one real standout great movie that I saw. And it's like Anora was a really good movie, but I didn't walk out of there. Look, if you want to have Stevie Lou on this podcast, he was floored by it. No. I mean, like the people I know were like floored by this movie, and I was like, that was a very good movie. I also watched it at home, right? So it's always a little different. I got a SAG-AFTRA trailer, whatever. Anyway, screener, but it's all good, whatever, man. But yeah, no. There was definitely a lot of PR narratives around the Best Actress race this year. Is kind of very interesting to me to see, like. Mikey Madison was actually one of the names I didn't hear mentioned a lot in the press. Is like the narrative for Demi Moore was like she deserves it because she's put together this amazing body of work, like San Elmo's Fire, I guess. And by the way, feel free to correct me if there's a great movie on her resume that like she should have won an Oscar for.
G.I. Jane.
I was gonna say that.
Well, that got Chris Rock slapped the shit out of at the Oscars.
I know he should have kept that movie's name out his mouth.
Wisdom with Emilio Estevez. Hello.
By the way, Dave G is on board. No, you can continue making your point. I think
no, it's all right. I mean, but I'm just gonna wrap it up by saying like, and then the other big one was around Emilia Perez, and so it's like there's a lot of open politicking this year, and I think. For me, the politicking was more interesting than a lot of the movies I watched because they were nominated for something.
Yeah, and I would say Striptease is probably the one. But if I had to give an award to anything, it would be Nothing But Trouble. I think that's probably her finest work.
For the Digital Underground, if nothing else.
Exactly.
I know you're kidding. We could do an entire podcast about that movie because I have a lot of thoughts about it.
We will have to do it right after another.
I'd say a series. A series of episodes about only that movie. Deepest
One
Dive.
episode will be about Digital Underground. Tie the knot. Tie the knot. Eric, did you see The Substance?
I did see The Substance, and as you could tell by my looks, I've lived it. Both characters at the same time. In fact, if you did the close-up on me, it would be sort of the last shot of Demi Moore in the film, without spoiling it. But if you did the zoom on me, I'm more the after. I'm the sad conclusion to the character. I very much agree. I thought Substance, if there were in a world without Anora, Substance would have even gone up in my book a little bit higher. It was. I love that Hollywood recognized batshit crazy films, and you could say Anora, oddly enough, after the first half hour, sort of settles down into a much more conventional narrative. But that first half hour is pretty batshit, and then The Substance goes the opposite. Starts out kind of staid and slowly works its way. At first feels like a really cool Twilight Zone or Black Mirror. As it goes on, though, the David Cronenberg of it all. But yet, in a way that felt much more organized and connected to theme than some of I love Cronenberg's work, but sometimes it is just batshit on top of batshit. This one, it felt like, there was really interesting themes, things it was saying about Hollywood, about aging, about, what it means to sort of live in the modern day with cameras everywhere you go, everyone always filming themselves. And she was great. But I agree, like what she did versus what Mikey Madison did, it is hard to compare them, because Mikey Madison, there's so much she's playing in that film, particularly as the movie progresses. Mikey Madison's character gets much more interesting as it goes on. And she started off already pretty cool. And as it goes on, she gets deeper, more conflicted, and you really feel her arc over the course of a couple very long weeks. Demi Moore's arc is more like, in essence, the makeup, the costume, everything takes over. She's still terrific in it, but it is one of those. If she won, it would have been sort of like when Kim Basinger won for LA Confidential. Good performance, a brilliant film. Yeah. But it would, in some ways, I guess if you stick around long enough, at some point they give you something. And that's what it felt like with the case of Kim Basinger. Demi Moore, though, was very worthy of the nomination. I didn't see all the other performances, but Mikey Madison was very worthy of the win.
Yeah, no, I agree. And like I was saying, that even as, I sat and thought about the movie, anything that I thought, maybe didn't work as well for me, I always thought that she was great. Kaylee, we'll let you go in a moment, but Dave D starts a good conversation point. Can we talk about Best Picture snubs? Challengers, Nosferatu, A Different Man. Was there anything you saw this year, Kaylee, that you can't believe did not win? Or did not get nominated, sorry.
It's hard to say. I did really like A Different Man. I don't think that I would have put Nosferatu. I know a lot of people have said that they would have put that up there. I would not. A Different Man, I definitely would have probably at least put up for a nomination, probably not for a win. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I think it kind of made sense. I really didn't see a ton of movies in 2024, so it's a little bit hard to say if anything huge got missed over.
Sure. Well, I'll ask the other guys, and we'll also start talking about The Brutalist. So before I let you go, Kaylee, you didn't have to see The Brutalist to know that there is a laser sharp, lightning quick take on the film The Brutalist that I want to make sure to share with our audience here.
It's funny because The Brutalist, albeit a great movie, but the brutal part is how long it is.
Whoa! The one and only person to have the take that the brutal thing about The Brutalist was how fucking long it is.
He's so proud of himself.
And Richard Roper could not be less impressed.
Those filters, those StreamYard filters have never been asked to work so hard.
I got to tell you, man, look, it was not a good show. I watched every minute of it. He got Richard Roper right before the Oscars, which is very impressive.
No, and Richard Roper even says, I'm talking to you for an hour. I don't talk to anybody the day before the Oscars this long. So clearly he doesn't keep up with what John's up to.
No, and the fact that John heard an hour and started a countdown to when his episode would be over.
I've got you for
nuts.
17 more minutes.
Okay, we got 7.5 more minutes. Let me read this super chat from Liam saying you don't know anything.
Yeah, and also it was interesting because I wasn't even doing an Academy Awards show with Richard Roper. I love talking to the three of you. Usually, I usually do the show with Christian Toto from Hollywood and Toto. If I was doing this with Richard Roper, I would have seen every movie. I would have made whatever I would have had to do. I'm like, okay, let's try and connect with this guy. But
especially since John is in two guilds, writers and screen actors, which have been sending everybody their screeners for the last 3 months. Like, you have to be a really lazy movie viewer to not have seen anything.
Or maybe he doesn't have the internet. Remember, there's that rumor going around. He just goes to McDonald's parking lots to get the free Wi-Fi.
Guess what? SAG sent me a bunch of DVDs. Oh, Kaylee.
So I'll interrupt just for our audio audience. Dave D says, writer of One Too Many, ladies and gentlemen. And Kaylee, you can hold it up again. You have the
One
DVD.
Too Many.
By the way, that is a release that should never be put out on Blu-ray. Standard def DVD only. The writer of One Too Many, ladies and gentlemen. We appreciate
it.
This has his audio commentary on it. That's why I got it. I really want to hear.
I just to interject, since that came up, I believe our buddy Carl is going to do something with that, with the audio commentary. I think I think Adam Bush. I think Adam Bush suggested it. So if you want to hate anybody, hate the guy from Buffy. So.
Well, here's the thing. You're right. That should not be on Blu-ray. It should be in a 4K transfer. So you can enjoy every sweat drop during
ultra high def
on the toilet scene.
Yeah. But in any case, I felt like I had to make sure to bring that up while you were still here, Kaylee.
What a waste of access to Richard Roper. I mean, seriously, John did not push back on a single point Roper made, which is like fine. He wants to be friends with the guy. But not even a follow-up question. Not even like, what'd you think of Timothy Chalamet's performance?
Yeah. I'm sorry, this is a great line. Dave D, I think when you open the case to that DVD, it burps.
It's definitely moist.
I don't want to open it.
Yeah, no, there's no follow-up questions. In most of the movies, John was like, I didn't see that one either. Tell me about it. The one that he did see was Emilia Perez because it's on Netflix and you don't have to necessarily pay for it. We'll talk about the rest of some of these nominees. But Kaylee, you've got some great things to promote for our audience here, including a great new show that you've just started where two of the three of us have been a guest on it. So tell everybody what you've got going on.
Yes, absolutely. So all my normal, boring stuff, you can always go check me out on Once Over with Kaylee, Cayley, on YouTube for different movie reviews. I review all sorts of movies, so I love this sort of movie talk, even if I am not a huge fan of the Oscars themselves. But in addition to that, I am also starting a new podcast called The Murder Game. And it is a hypothetical thought exercise where I have different guests on and they come to join me to tell me their plots of murder. And there's a lot of fun stuff and it's just a great time. We get to, be goofy and talk about, it's a little bit of an escapism game, I guess you could say.
Well, we had a lot of fun on the episode I recorded and you reveal an infamous concert that you almost attended that still I'm floored by. What were you going to say, Liam? I'm sorry.
Oh, I just want to do a do-over. I didn't think I did a good job.
You can always do a do-over. Listen, so right now, I've only released one episode. You can find the Murder Game Podcast on Spotify. You can find it on YouTube, Murder Game Podcast. You can find me on Twitter, Murder Game Pod. If you want to be a guest, you can contact me on Twitter. But I think that it is going to make so much more sense after we've had a couple more episodes out. So once everybody kind of gets to hear the whole shtick, if you ever have other ideas or solutions to the murder game, you're always welcome to come and join me again.
Well, and of course, people should make sure to check out Kaylee in Las Vegas, May 9th through the 11th at Hackamania. Promo code Kaylee, Cayley.
Yes, hackmania.com.
Yes. And
I will be there with Who Are These Podcasts and with Weird Medicine for the last
great Dr. Steve
Weird Medicine episode.
Well, he probably doesn't have any time to podcast, considering that like everyone in radio and podcasting sends him pictures of I'm sure Hughley sent him a picture of his gout foot. I'm sorry, what were you saying, Liam?
Oh, also, what tattoo are you getting after this podcast? It looks like you're in the waiting area of a tattoo parlor.
I feel like I should be.
I fucking nailed it, guys.
I should get a tattoo after every podcast.
You should.
During.
Yeah.
It's smart.
Kaylee, thank you for taking the time. Congratulations to everybody except your boy Igor. So sorry for that, but it was great to get to visit with you.
Thank you so much for having me. Happy Oscars, everyone.
Yes.
Bye.
Thank
you.
Happy Oscars.
I should have put on a tearaway suit because now that she's gone, I could be dressed the way I was when she posted a picture on her social media and she was dressed like that. And I'm like, well, God damn it. I have to at least put in some degree.
Oh, and thank you for the heads up, Christian.
No, it was like 10 minutes before, like I was about to come into this room to start recording. And then she posted that picture.
She does look like she came from the Vanity Fair party straight to your podcast.
She might have.
Most guests do.
I do want to talk about The Brutalist, but I don't know if you guys have heard before.
It's funny because The Brutalist, albeit a great movie, the brutal part is how fucking long it is.
Whoa.
Albeit he's one of his new friends.
Yeah, he's related to Al B. Shore, I think, is who that is.
I'll be back.
Yeah, look, I not enjoyed. I thought The Brutalist was incredibly well done, but I walked out of it. I'm like, the only thing that might win is Adrian Brody. And it turned out that I was correct, although I guess there was like
It went two other.
Yeah, but in terms of the big awards,
This might surprise you. I turned it on, and within 10 minutes, I was asleep for almost all of it.
Oh, well, that does track.
You know what was brutal about that, Liam?
So I still haven't really seen it.
You both had awesome dreams though that night.
Well,
what was longer, the movie or Adrian Brody's acceptance speech? Hey, people, come on, let's a little bit of
Yeah, well, I am glad you mentioned that because he did set the record for the longest acceptance speech in Oscars history. The craziest thing.
Wait, Christian, longer than Dustin Hoffman's? I mean, that was
this was like 5 minutes and change. So maybe it's like number 2 to that. But that's
Dustin
what I was
Hoffman.
Here's what you need to know about Adrian Brody's acceptance speech for The Brutalist. This, what I'm about to play, comes at minute 4.
We'll wrap up. Please turn the music off. I've done this before. Thank you.
Not his first rodeo.
It's not my first rodeo, but I will be brief. I will not be egregious, I promise.
He had been so egregious by that point, and then he continued to be egregious. But
I love once every 20 years, Hollywood gives him a chance. Once every 20 years, and he fucks it up every time. Like, it's crazy.
Well, I hope you know what I really want, though, is if you ever saw The Village, I want his character in The Village to show up in some kind of legacy sequel or even a spinoff where it's just him. That was one of the greatest decisions ever made by an Oscar winner. This side of, I guess it was Cuba Gooding when he did, was the
Snow Dogs,
or that one on the boat. So Cuba Gooding was very nervous about not working. Boat Trip.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing about Cuba Gooding Jr. is not a lot of range.
No,
he kind of nailed it with Jerry Maguire.
Yeah, he's known for yelling, "Show me the money." I mean,
Radio,
he's very upfront. Oh yeah,
if you ever saw Radio, where I absolutely am convinced he was inspired by Beetlejuice, not the the Beetlejuice the three of us are thinking of, not the other one. His performance in that, it's like they need an award show just for his work in radio. Whatever limit he has to his range is in full display in that film, beautifully so.
Well, here's an idea for a podcast I have, which is Fred Durst. I've never seen it, but it's popping up on social media again.
Oh yeah,
did a movie with John Travolta as an autistic stalker, and I assume you guys haven't seen it, but I haven't seen it, and I want to basically just show it in chunks, and then stop and try to figure out what's going on.
I think that's a great idea. I've heard of that movie. Much like I've heard about the developmentally disabled Rosie O'Donnell on the Bus movie. I've not actually seen it.
The other sister?
Yeah,
riding the bus with my sister.
Yes.
Where she plays the sister.
Correct. Yes.
Oh, right. Other Sister was another movie about a sister who had some issues.
Dude, The Other Sister is well worth watching.
Well, and it seems like so is this movie from that great auteur, Fred Durst. By the way, Sam Bibley recently became friends with Liam. Hi, Liam. And wants to know if he said that The Substance was a fat chick movie. That offends me. I don't think that's actually what was said. But I do want to talk about The Brutalist because what's brutal about it is the runtime, Eric. But I want you to share your thoughts with it because I went and saw it, by the way, at RAMC, where we always go to the movies. I did go without either of you. I think I tried to get Liam to go, but he just.
I was busy that night.
You wanted to nap at home that day. I understand.
Yeah, no, I have a bed. I am paying rent to sleep here.
Yeah, that's fair. But what did you think, Eric?
Well, I saw it also in 70 millimeter at AMC, so I'm glad I saw that in the theater because I think watching that at home, I would have joined Liam in his dreamscape. It would have been a lot. And then not to mention just watching at home anytime, it's inevitably distractions. And the music, the cinematography, both won Oscars. The composer was in a band called Yuck. I don't know if you remember them. It's kind of like a post-90s grunge album, came out maybe 15 years ago. It's pretty good. I thought Brutal's was great. Really am fascinated by the idea that it's a Holocaust film in essence, but it's not about the Holocaust. It's about what it means to survive. I always go back to Mouse, one of those great graphic novels everyone in Hebrew school was reading when I was a kid. And the second Mouse is actually after he comes back. And I remember the end of Mouse 1 was, and here my troubles began. The idea of he was liberated from a camp. Now, what is life? And I thought that's, to me, what's so fascinating, and that it was focusing on what it means to come home. Do you ever come home? Can you ever come back? It's sort of stuck in its own head a little bit too much in the way like a movie like Tar is, in my opinion, where it's made by incredibly smart, talented people working with incredibly smart, talented performers and really making a lot out of not much of a budget. I mean, this movie was cheap. And when you watch the film, it's stunning how much they got out of that little budget. But the acting was great. There were so many emotional moments in it. I don't think it's hard to say I love the film, and I know it's very dark, but there's plenty of dark dramas that I could say I loved. It wasn't quite love, but it was definitely one I respected a lot. I'm glad I saw it in its entirety in the theater. And also, I think Felicity Jones sort of gotten a little bit of a short end of the stick, because I thought she was terrific in that film. And they haven't really, I know she was nominated, but she was never considered as anywhere near the top of the pack for supporting actress. And I thought when she showed up, like, it infused that movie with so much soul. And then Guy Pearce, who has never been better than he was in this film.
Yeah, so much so that I didn't realize it was him at first, because it was more like, he's unrecognizable. But I do want to spend a moment talking about Conclave, because I actually just saw it the other day, and I texted, because Liam, you spoke very highly of it, and sort of like what we said earlier, it is what you made and became an Oscar winner. It's like it hit all those notes, and that's not in a cynical way. That's not in a derogatory way. It checks every box.
I mean, it's crazy to say this about movies from the 90s. It's old school. It's an old school prestige film. The only thing I wasn't crazy about was some of the cinematography, because it felt very like digital and washed out. And I understand why they made the choice to do that. It's just kind of like you have these beautiful frescoes and rich colors, and these guys live in a very like I don't know if have you ever been to the Vatican?
I have, yes.
Yeah, so like I spent a week, in a hotel across the street from the Vatican, and like was basically, walking around. The guards at the Vatican are dressed like court jesters. Yeah. But court jesters that could snap your neck. Like, like I wouldn't fuck with them.
That's all court jesters in my mind.
But anyway, my point is just I thought it like structurally it was beautifully written. I thought like Isabella Rossellini was a lock for best supporting actress, because she not only did a good, she just didn't have much of a role, but she comes from the Rossellini family, and it used to be the Academy really respected that kind of thing,
Yeah, no, look, I agree that it was, it was that kind of performance, and sort of what you're saying, kind of like a legacy performance, if you will. But at the same time, that is an interesting category, the supporting actress, because our buddy John's friend, Richard Roper, said that he expected Zoe Saldana, that would be the only thing that movie won for. And when you see sort of, there are two nominees in this category that I immediately dismiss. When my wife and I watched A Complete Unknown, like I said, over the weekend, and when she saw that, I guess Monica Barbaro is that actress's name. She was the one who played Joan Baez, and she's like, "Wait, her?" So she was even like, "Wait, that's who got nominated." And,
little Mexican Joan.
Yeah, right, exactly, and not Sylvie.
Right.
Which is Elle Fanning. We have to talk about Wicked as sort of a bigger conversation, but I could kind of see Felicity Jones not winning when I saw what was nominated, and Isabella Rossellini, I think, needed to be in the movie more to be a player, if you will. But look, it's obviously that movie is built on, like the Catholic Church, it is built on the backs of men and the actors in that
and
film.
young boys.
Well, of course, that goes without saying. But I mean, John Lithgow just always being a stellar Lithgow, and I thought that everyone was great in it, and sort of. Because I think people may check it out, down the road. There's no reason to kind of get into, but there is a turn of events that, like you were saying, not only didn't I see it was coming, I didn't think that there was something to steer clear of. I figured it was really John Lithgow was kind of the wild card to the storytelling, sort of the adversary, if you will. What were you going to say, Liam?
I'm sorry, I just got diagnosed with ADHD, so it explains a lot of my podcast appearances. So pretty soon I won't be jumping all over other people when they're talking.
No, it's fine.
I apologize. But Lithgow gave such a restrained performance, such an un-Lithgow performance. I forget who directed it. I apologize to the director of Conclave. But I thought I was just so impressed with the job they did, kind of like however they got Lithgow to kind of like rein in his tics, bring it down, not be so shouty. It gave a performance that like really opened my eyes and reminded me of what an exciting actor he can be. At least like Pacino, like he's able to work with such a refined palette that it's kind of like sad that he doesn't do it more.
Edward Berger is his name, and
yes,
Eric, did you see Conclave?
I did not, but it feels like we're potentially entering the conclave soon.
Yeah,
I think our Pope is a little sick, and
we are. Yeah,
I wish him well, but maybe he might be too sick to continue.
If Netflix or someone doesn't send a documentary crew to film the actual conclave,
Conclave 2.
You don't put it out until after everything's been announced. But it's like, let's see how close did they get
into the notoriously camera-friendly inner sanctums of the Vatican.
Exactly.
You have to hide every camera in like a lapel.
Where they yell at you if you take pictures of the Sistine Chapel?
Yeah, which you could buy a postcard of it, but don't take a picture of it.
Yeah.
Did either of you see Emilia Perez? I'm not gonna lie, we're at the point now with the results of the Oscars that I'm like, oh, I'm relieved. I don't really need to see that. But did either of you see it?
I lived it. No, I did not see it, it's funny. Like, and the things I've heard about it from friends whose opinions I really admire, made me put it so far down on my list.
Well, we a couple that we're friends with, the husband thought that it was very well done, but the wife couldn't have hated it more. But she also didn't like A Real Pain, so then I didn't know what to think. But I was like, I'm gonna
Anti-Semite.
Well, by the way, earlier Kaylee said she didn't really like Real Pain. I did mean to point out she's Jewish, so she's allowed to not like it. I actually liked it for real. Yeah.
I didn't see it. Is that the anti-Semitic documentary, that one, or
no? This is the one that Jesse Eisenberg.
Let's really go into that now.
The Night of 1,000 Anti-Semites.
Well, you're talking about the Israeli-Palestinian film? Is that what you're referencing, Liam? Because shocker, I didn't see it.
I didn't see it either. I just know that the documentary was. Anyway, back to Emilia Perez.
Yeah,
I think it's fucked up, and I mean, look, I like Zoe Saldana. I think it's great that she won. I think it's fucked up she felt the need to apologize on her moment of triumph.
Yeah, like
literally the greatest moment of an actor's career, and she's standing there apologizing for the movie that she was in and trying to explain, like, that it wasn't racist or anti-Mexicanic or whatever. Like, I think I'm a fan of Zoe Saldana, and to watch her kind of like have to do that or feel the obligation to do that made me sad and angry.
Well, I'm a fan of Zoe Saldana, and I was before, but especially because our kids used to go to the same preschool. Yeah, that's right. That's a little parenting flex. Oh, you want to know who else had their kids go there? Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis. All right.
Larry Fine.
No. It would be Larry Fine's great grandson.
You reminded me of the comic who used to have a bit that was just so she could point out that her kid went to school with Gal Gadot's kids. And she was on a text chain with her, and then after Wonder Woman 2 happened. Never heard that bit again.
Yeah, that's a great time. Well, now I need to mention that. But we saw, her husband sitting there with her, and that guy does have great hair. It was kind of amazing. I hadn't seen it in so long, and I was like, oh yeah.
Have you ever felt it, Christian?
No,
Was
I was
it
in a
as soft
pie
as
eating
my
contest.
dreams?
I was in a pie eating contest with Ashton Kutcher, though. Neither of us won. Anyway,
Well, he's had. All right, is this gross? If it is, feel free to cut it out. I mean, he's had Demi's pie, and he's had Mila Kunis's pie. I can't imagine getting excited about a cherry pie.
No, we don't do editing on this show, so I appreciate that.
Well, I guess don't worry. There'll be some clippers who will.
Oh, because you're on. That's right.
Extract it. Yeah.
Everybody, all the clippers love Liam. Yeah. The only thing that I'm gonna see is I was trying to be funny, and you said if you want to have Stevie Lou on, and I said I don't because I thought it was a laugh.
It was great.
Yeah, we had laughs. We had fun. So I want to talk a little bit more about some of the films, but we're kind of talking about stuff that happens during the course of the telecast. And I think this best animated short, this interaction between the two filmmakers. So these Iranian filmmakers, who are standing up there trying to make a point that there are parts of the world that maybe we don't understand, and we should be a little bit more open-minded, that they don't have the narrow worldview that we thought. And then this happens.
It's a miracle. It's a miracle, and speaking in front of these expectant audience is very hard for us. So I think we can...
Okay. We're going to dedicate our film and this... Oh, no. Oh, my God. It's your turn.
No.
It's your turn.
This is your turn, but this is the first paragraph.
Just the fact that we managed to make this film under the extraordinary circumstances of our country is a miracle. And yes, if we persevere and remain faithful, miracle do happen.
No.
Oh my God.
Let me read it myself. Until yesterday.
Yeah, so that's the great moment of no. Instead of letting you read the wrong paragraph and then maybe I take it and read the earlier paragraph, let me just take it from you. And it was incredibly uncomfortable. It was one of the moments.
I love when you repeated the same sentences verbatim, though. That was a highlight of every Oscar for me.
Visa,
Yeah,
and we were
what she had
totally
just said.
disappointed.
She had said that right before this clip, right?
And
Are they
now we
married?
Standing here with this
Not for long.
statuette.
I don't believe they are.
Okay.
They have different first and last names, and I had their names written down earlier.
First and last.
Yeah. So yeah, that was fairly uncomfortable, and then it's like, oh, I don't know if I was going to see animated short anyway. But
I just want to point out that it's Disney times Oscars minus the last 10 minutes. Hulu cut it off.
Oh,
Sorry.
yes.
You were watching like I was on Hulu. You were very angry.
I well, that's Conan didn't do a good enough job keeping everybody on it. And it's really Adrian Brody's fault.
Well, Conan also did a 20-minute opening bit.
Well, the whole thing starts with sort of, and I think from a production standpoint and from a television standpoint, to start with all the stuff with Wicked and having them each come out and do all that.
Went so long.
It did go so long, but I also am like, all right, they're not doing this for me. I do get it. I do find the most fitting thing to be that Wicked, didn't win any of the Epic Awards. And it was like, let's put all of our time on this. And Cynthia Erivo does a song from The Wiz, and then Queen Latifah does a song from The Wiz later. I didn't know we were going to get so much of The Wiz. It's almost like
I always want that.
Well, you just want to ease on down the road.
Not to mention the 15-minute salute to James Bond for some reason.
that was the point, because I watched it and then my wife watched the end and then she kind of looped back and started watching the beginning. The James Bond version, I'm like, you can turn it off now. And I like James Bond, by the way, and some of those songs are fantastic, but
not by those singers, though. I mean, I didn't see Shirley Bassey, I didn't see Adele.
The best thing was that they would put the
Eilish.
name of the singer, and one of the singers' name was Lisa. Now, not Lisa in Cult Jam, no, just Lisa. And I'm like, if you go by the single name, you better make sure people know who you are. Madonna, Cher, Rihanna. No, Lisa. I'm like, oh, it's Lisa. Yeah, no, that was probably a low point of the telecast.
Maybe they were afraid of doxing her.
Don't trash my kids.
That might have been exactly what it was. Yeah, so that was I only heard this morning that people were watching on Hulu. I don't know why anyone would assume that an awards telecast, especially the Oscars, would go over. I don't know why anyone wouldn't build in time there, because
the Oscars.
It's fairly likely that the Oscars are going to go over. Yes, sir.
Yeah, a few years ago, I had back, I think still might have been in like TiVo days, DVR days. I recorded the Oscars and we were behind, and it stopped right when they were about to give the Oscar to La La Land or Moonlight. And so it was kind of like, and it just stopped. I'm like, well, I guess we'll look it up. And then Lauren tells me from the other room, I think something weird happened. I'm like, what are you talking about? And she's like, I don't know. And so we went online and very quickly found out. And like, of all the Oscars to have it run out, the worst one.
I was doing my podcast in a studio at that point, the AfterBuzz studio where Eric's been, where I used to do a lot of stuff, and the show was of course running long, and I was sitting there and I was like about to leave. I'm like, all right, they're gonna announce Best Picture. I can probably just find out what it was. I'm like, you know what? Let me stay here. So I was glad I stayed. I actually did watch it, but I almost missed out on that. Yeah, I think it is a tough thing when you're trying to. But look, for living here on the West Coast, the fact that it started at 4:00 this year, I'm like, all right, that's much appreciated. There was a time where it started at 8:30 Eastern, because they used to build in a half-hour red carpet. Now they do like 4 hours of red carpet. So I mean, there's that. What are your thoughts on the telecast in general? What stood out for you, Liam, in terms of the actual Oscars as a show?
Whenever you have Conan as the star of something, it's always very interesting, because Conan is a very strong personality, and kind of like, it's like when Billy Crystal hosted, and it was like all about Billy Crystal kind of like tap dancing through the Best Picture nominees. And in fact, I thought it was very interesting that Conan started with a crawling out of Demi Moore in the substance, and B, Billy Crystal got a special material credit at the end of the telecast, which made me wonder what Billy Crystal was writing and if that was part of it.
I mean, that would probably be it, because his brain probably still works that way, because of the opens that they used to do when he was the host. That would actually make sense.
I wouldn't be surprised. He probably has Conan's number. He probably called him up and said, look, you don't have to use this, but I had this idea. If I hosted this, or Conan might have called him for advice. And, Billy would have said, hey, I call him Billy. We're best friends.
Well, if you called him Bill Crystal, it would sound we would think you were talking about the guy from the Weekly Standard.
William H. Crystal, which sounds like a meth nickname.
It does.
But anyway, yeah. So that was my thought. I thought that was very interesting, because again, it was a throwback to what is now old school Oscars hosting.
Yeah.
And I think Conan did the best he could keeping it moving, which is kind of like the toughest job an Oscars host has, because there's a point where the host has to give it over to everyone else.
Yeah, of course.
Like the celebrities who are presenting. And so you're in a room, like you're basically taking a room full of the biggest egomaniacs on earth and asking them to keep the amount of attention on them in front of their peers in the world brief. Right.
Yeah.
So it's like Conan basically did what he could do. And I will say, this is a weird thing. It's not a flex. It's just the way my life has been. I know a lot of the people who wrote on the Oscars telecast this year. So I kind of like recognized their sense of humor, and it really felt like the first Gen X Oscars, like even more so than Chris Rock. Like it really felt like the first time like you got a Mr. Show / Conan O'Brien generation Oscar telecast.
Well, yeah, it it's interesting because as you were talking about that, it reminded me of the year that Letterman hosted, and
Yes.
he went out there and he did like stupid pet tricks, or maybe I think it was stupid human tricks. So he went out and did what he does, and then was panned for it. And Oprah Uma we'll talk about in a moment, but
Can I just make an addendum? I'm sorry.
Please. No, go ahead.
I brought up the fact that I know these writers, not as a flex, but just to say I wouldn't criticize it anyway.
Oh yeah, no, I know what you're saying. I think it was
it.
fine. Yeah. And what I did find interesting is that it was a very Conan thing to say, "Don't worry, I'm not going to waste your time," and then do this production number.
Waste time. I won't waste time. I won't waste time. He won't waste time. Why would I waste time?
Dude, you know.
Such an audacious.
What was that, Liam?
You know he was in the room pitching 30 ideas that involve him shredding on the guitar. So
Yes.
This was a nice compromise.
This was a nice compromise.
Now, for no good reason, Sandworm from Doom 2 playing chopsticks on the piano.
So mostly the reason that I pulled this clip is because that is like the most Conan thing that I think he could have done during the show, as was having the sand
on the harp. That was my
Sandworm from Dune come out later for the harp. Yeah, look, I found that to be charming because I liked Conan. That was the show that I would stay up late and watch when I was in college, because that's when Conan was on. Yeah, Letterman was the earlier show by then, but so yeah, I think he did a fine job, and he does make me laugh. I thought there were some good jokes along the way.
The Sandler dressed like a slob at the Oscars.
Yeah.
That was hilarious. Like that was like just how comfortable Sandler was just fucking around in front of the entire industry.
What are you doing right now?
I'm asking you what you're wearing.
Nobody even thought about what I was wearing. You brought it up.
And that's my favorite Sandler, is that delivery, because obviously that's like the Billy Madison, that's the Happy Gilmore. I love when he gets, when we get irate Sandler.
You're dressed like a guy playing video poker at 2 a.m., Adam.
And you know what, Conan? I like the way I look, because I'm a good person.
So he's doing both of his voices. And then, the bit ends with him doing the callback to the Golden Globes.
See, one more thing. Chalamet!
And he kisses him. How sweet is that?
Timothy Chalamet trying to pretend that he's a good sport about anything. But I think that Sandler sort of being this, universally beloved elder statesman of comedy. What were people talking about the SNL 50? One of the first things they would mention was Sandler's song during there, and how it brought some people to tears. Him mentioning both Farley and Norm Macdonald at the end of it. I was, of course, bursting with pride for Melanie Hutzel, who probably hadn't been mentioned on television in a few decades.
Ellen Cleghorn.
Yeah. Yeah. So in any case, I thought Conan was good. Was there anything about the Oscars that stood out for you? And again, we're talking about the show, Eric.
I thought they nailed the jokes they needed to about, Amelia Perez, the actress, what's her name, Carla, blah, 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 like, that how many F words were being said in Anora is 5 under how many her publicist said every time she goes to Twitter. That's a good joke, and a way of like doing it without it being nasty, and yet they went there. But Conan's smart. He doesn't go too deep in those waters. Kept it moving. He's obviously great with one-liners. I won't waste your time went on too long, which I know is the point.
Yes,
I get it. I you could have Sideshow Bob step on as many rakes as you want. That thing will still be funny, but at some point I was like, okay, this joke got old quick.
Yeah.
But I thought, he's a great host. He's the perfect guy. Liam, great point that it did feel very Gen X. Like it wasn't afraid to be a little weird at times, a little ironic. Like, yeah, the sandworm coming back a second time.
Yeah.
If eliciting what sounded like no laughs in the first time. And then like, well, you know what we'll do then? F you, we're bringing him back. And I thought when he came back on the harp, I did laugh out loud. I don't think I did the first time, but the second time I thought that was brilliant, especially that he had the chutzpah to bring him back. And I think that's kind of the edgy sort of grunge rock approach of comedy, that we had when Conan came about, like he was wonderfully weird and he'll always be wonderfully weird. And yet accessibly weird too.
Well, you were referencing one-liners, and I thought he had a couple of good ones. And then there are one-liners where that stage that night for the Oscars is kind of the best time to make a joke like this one.
Anora's having a good night. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's great news. 2 wins already. I guess Americans are excited to see somebody finally stand up to a powerful Russian.
So it's like, oh, it's funny, but then the crowd's like, oh, we need to clap for that. But this was the best one.
Well, we're halfway through the show, which means it's time for Kendrick Lamar to come out and call Drake a pedophile.
That was great.
He says with such happiness.
Yeah.
Glee.
Don't worry, I'm lawyered up.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I found that stuff to be fun. I enjoyed kind of watching that. I won't play it, but the firefighters doing jokes, I thought one of the jokes was particularly good. But look, when you do these award shows, you're gonna have badly, I don't want to say badly written, but maybe banter that's not well suited for the people giving it. Like
it's a testament to the work done by the mixers, the engineers, the designers, the editors. I could go on and on.
I think you nailed it. That's a perfect description, Molly.
Sound is what I do, Miles.
Killed it.
I love your sound. You are sound.
Thank you.
So yeah, the Miley Cyrus, Miles Teller, obviously the, but by the way,
that's Miley Cyrus.
Yes, still better
Holy
chemistry.
shit.
Still better chemistry than he had with Kate Mara in the Fantastic Four movie. He did, so.
Yeah, well, it's also like if you're gonna have one unfunny person, why don't you put them with another unfunny person? I think that's the key to comedy.
Are you talking about this show? That's rude.
Oh, dude, it's Miley and Miles. I get it.
That's actually what,
they made a joke about that.
I missed this. I kind of like not glued to my seat for best sound. I got to be honest with you.
Yeah, well, that's fair. So look, there were some great remembrances. We had Morgan Freeman talking about Gene Hackman, which I thought was very well done. And everyone is listing sort of these great Gene Hackman roles. And obviously, me and my background, I just felt like people should definitely be giving just a little bit more credit to him as Lex Luthor in the Richard Donner Superman. He's in 3 of them, but specifically in the first one, because he was just like, oh, look, this guy is playing a comic book villain. And as I said last week, Gene Hackman walked so that Jack Nicholson and Heath Ledger could literally run away with the comic book villain. And we've got a new Lex Luthor coming. And we had Kevin Spacey as Lex Luthor, which, Lex Luthor was probably like, hey, man, could you have somebody less evil play me in the movie?
Jesse Eisenberg was the answer to that, by the way.
Oh,
Jesse Eisenberg. But there's one.
What about a nice Jewish boy?
Well, Nicholas Hoult is going to be Lex Luthor in the next.
And he looks great.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. A friend who shows up a lot of times, Roz JD. Christian, did you ever read the Scholastic Books young adult novelization of Superman 4? You know what, Roz JD? I have not, but that is going on a list of something I'm going to try to find, because even as a kid, so I was 11 when Superman 4 came out, and I watched everything, and I sat there and I was like, this is not good. I knew it wasn't good.
Lest we forget Gene Hackman's best performance, the voice of Nuclear Man.
Oh, in that movie.
Yeah.
What's interesting is, like, I said this last week, so sorry if you follow my social media, but
sorry to all the Clippers.
We're all sorry.
Gene Hackman, Gene Hackman, he was the French Connection, Popeye Doyle. That's what I was going to say. Any other act in the 70s, that would have been the high point of their entire career. That wasn't even like the high point of I think the 3-year stretch of his.
Yeah. That wasn't even the highlight of the 70s for him. You're right.
Yeah. No, I mean, he was great. And, obviously it's terrible when you hear about the way that things seem to have gone, in his, basically how he died. But in any case, I think that it is nice when you hear people sort of singing the praises for someone that you always think is, they were great. There was also a tribute to Quincy Jones. And I want to get your thoughts on the interaction that Miss Oprah Winfrey had with Whoopi Goldberg.
Changed forever and for the better after meeting him. He actually discovered me for The Color Purple, which was my first film. Yeah.
Wait a second. Pause it for a second.
Yep.
I just want to point out she was world famous when she was discovered for The Color Purple. Okay, keep going.
No, it's fine. That's actually the part that
she already had a whole career. Yeah.
Who? Oprah?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if she'd been syndicated at that point. So
Dude, she was famous. And I know because I lived outside Chicago and I knew who.
Right. Did you feel that Whoopi was being somewhat disingenuous with because it does look like a really sarcastic clap. I wanted to get your guys' thoughts before we move on.
I think Whoopi Goldberg is, just from observing her, incredibly good at the politics of Hollywood.
Right.
Like having seen the career move she's made and the way she talks about certain projects and certain people, she seems to know exactly when to be like brutally honest and when to just be like,
yeah, no, that's fair.
Is this Oprah coming out, by the way? Really? I'm serious.
No, we haven't, she hasn't written that chapter yet. So a little earlier, I was talking about how every year I do this Oscars special as part of the Bladtcast. And for most of the last decade, I've always done it with Christian Toto, who I've gotten to know. He does a website, a right of center film website called Hollywood in Toto. And I was a little bummed because we do it every year. And when I invited him to be on and, try to schedule it, he said that he was going to be on vacation with his family. And I believe him. I believed him then, and I believe him now. But here he is earlier today with Megyn Kelly.
You can see Whoopi kind of pull away from her while she starts talking about herself and The Color Purple. Oprah does. And then Whoopi gives her a couple of claps like, oh, yeah, go Oprah. This one isn't about you. And then says Me Too, which is kind of like the Me Too thing is very interesting because she was the bigger star. She had the bigger role, but with Oprah, Christian, it's all about Oprah.
I don't know if the stage was big enough for those two egos, so that's part of the problem here.
So I understand, Christian, it's a bigger show than mine. Obviously, there's a lot more reach. I'm not offended, but I hope that if you knew you were doing Megyn Kelly, you would have just told me that was why you couldn't have done the podcast.
Christian, you bring the Christian, and Liam and I are starting a Toto cover band. So I think that might fill that gap for you.
Yeah. Well, I hope you open with Rosanna. Because I was pulling this clip when I saw it shared earlier, I do have to mention that Megyn Kelly has this assessment of Whoopi's career. I think this might be the same.
You can see Whoopi kind of pull away from her while she starts talking about herself.
Yeah, that wasn't the one I meant to show. But
remember when Sherman Hemsley still is my favorite Whoopi. If you remember the fabulous performance he did with Howard as Ted Danson.
Seeing Whoopi Goldberg outside the view is a little refreshing because
I have to tell you, so something in StreamYard reset for me. So usually I queue up my clips and they don't start playing right away. I had done pretty well for most of the show. I did not mean to speak over you. So you're talking about Sherman Hemsley Did he play Whoopi when
did.
Howard
Whoopi.
played
On the
when
Howard
Howard
Stern Show.
played
Yeah.
Clarence Thomas? Is that
No,
what
he played
Sorry,
Ted
Jim.
Danson in a certain kind of makeup that probably wasn't okay then.
It's
Far
called
less okay
blackface.
now.
Certainly isn't now.
You can say blackface. You won't get in trouble.
Yeah, you won't get in trouble for saying it. Well, it's interesting that you mentioned.
If I say it 3 times like Candyman, it appears though. You have to be careful.
I have 2 points. So Megyn Kelly has this observation about Whoopi Goldberg's career.
Seeing Whoopi Goldberg outside The View is a little refreshing because you do remember she did have talent back in the day, and she is actually a good actress and a good performer. And you catch her in The View, and
you're so
it's
right.
Shocking.
You forget that she actually is a very good actress. She was great. And I remember Jumpin' Jack Flash. I loved that movie.
Do you think that that's what we should be saying first from Whoopi
T-Rex.
Goldberg's
T-Rex, Tyrannosaurus Rex, man. That's
and she's going to mention 2 more movies. And there's one of these movies that I'm sure Megyn Kelly hasn't seen. You guys guess.
That was so fun. And then, of course, Ghost. She was wonderful in that. And not to mention The Color Purple.
And not to mention it because I've never seen it.
Because I ran out of Whoopi Goldberg movies that I know.
Yeah, it was in the clip.
And that's all the Whoopi that I know.
I got to say, what I thought was interesting is, we're in Trump's America now, and a lot of that, like, Oscar so white push for diversity seems to have disappeared from the Oscar stage within a year.
Yeah.
Like, it was kind of really surprising to me, like, how quickly they reverted back to their preferred standard of hosts and presenters and winners.
Yeah, no, I needed just sorry, I just needed.
I'm bringing up another uncomfortable point in 10 minutes. So,
allow 3 middle-aged white men to explain it.
Yeah, Eric, I do understand that, not because of what Liam just said. I understand that you need to excuse yourself. So
do.
we appreciate you being on. Liam and I'll bring this thing home. And is there anything else you want to shout out from the films you enjoyed or the telecast? Anything else before we let you go?
No, I mean, I think they were also, to your point, Liam, they're going for as little controversy as possible, and they got it. There was almost nothing controversial or even left of center, right of center. They just, I think, towed a line like Toto. Hold the line. I'm sorry. Thank you.
We went an hour 26 without me hitting the bell.
Oh, I know. No, you could have hit it many times with Liam. I think you made a decision, you made a choice, and you stuck by it.
That's true.
But so I think it was a good telecast. It even though it was long, it was zippy. I mean, I watched a lot of the speeches. I'm glad they didn't do the song performances, considering the songs themselves were just not as exciting as years past.
Yeah.
I would love to see a Bond tribute done better than that. I oftentimes listen to the Bond, like the compilation of just all the Bond songs. I love those songs. So I wish they did that better.
You mean the film series that won 0 Oscars that got a tribute this year?
As it should. No, it's won Oscars in the past. It's won 4
technical Oscars.
Song Oscars too. Yeah.
So, Eric, before you go, I want to get your thought on what Liam and I are going to talk about in a moment. Why do you think things went the way they did for Wicked? What are your thoughts about that not winning? Ariana Grande didn't win. Cynthia Erivo didn't win. It didn't win for director. It didn't win for picture.
Yeah.
It didn't win for
director. Wasn't even nominated.
Correct. Yeah.
I think Wicked, and it's tricky. Like Liam was mentioning some people who are in his orbit. The cinematographer Alice Brooks, who did not get an Oscar nomination, I felt like really deserved it. In light of like the other nominations that movie did get, I'm not sure why she was left out of the mix, because I thought she did a wonderful job with it. But I knew her since like USC film school days, and so it was exciting to see her at this peak. And John Cho, I knew of him. We had a lot of mutual friends, and his career has always been interesting. I think with Wicked, maybe it worked so well as a movie musical adaptation of a beloved property that people liked a whole lot. And I think people were excited that it didn't suck, especially 2 years after Cats and how terrible that went. So I think like Wicked could have been a horrible misfire. It was not. It was really well made, well done. I'm not sure what part 2's holds for us. I have not seen the stage musical, but I think what happened was there's that flush of like new love, which is, oh my God, it's good. It's professional. It looks good. It's acted well, mostly. And then after a while, the sort of fizzy high maybe left. And that's what then is like, well, does it have better sound than Dune Part 2? Does it have better editing than a number of these other films? Like, so I think it just sort of, once the sort of fizzy high of competence and again, really solid filmmaking went past, that's when they started looking at it. I think Cynthia Erivo in other years could have won. She was that good.
That's fair.
I think in any year, Ariana Grande, on the other hand, should never have been nominated nor won. But her singing voice is beautiful. I loved hearing her sing Somewhere Over the Rainbow. I just think the fizzy high kind of went flat.
By the way, I was convinced that Cynthia Erivo was singing live, but Ariana Grande was lip syncing. There were a lot of wide shots, and I before they started doing the wide shots, I started to ask myself. Liam, we'll continue the conversation in a moment. I do need to let Eric go. People can see Eric Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific on our show, Marvel Movie Talk, where we'll be talking about the 2-episode premiere of Daredevil Born Again on Disney+. So make sure to look for that over on the Geekscape Network. And Eric, anything else you'd like to promote?
You can see Eric and Stan Laurel moving a piano up the stairs in Silver Lake.
Actually, or I'm delivering ice like Curly Howard. I just want to shout out to Roz
Stanley.
To Roz
Certainly is
JD.
another fine podcast you booked me on.
Oh, sorry, that's Abbott and Costello. When Ariana Grande talks,
I've been holding it in for 90 minutes. I had to say
please, anytime. Roz JD, when Ariana Grande talks now, dust comes out. I just have to give my hats off to that. That's a fabulous.
That is a nice line.
That's a real truth.
I did not see that, Roz JD. That is fantastic.
Proud of you.
And
like
by the way,
he
does agree. That's a good episode, the ice delivery. So, thank you, Eric. He's gone.
Always
he
good
left.
to see
Chris Tuthill says he's been done with the Oscars since they passed on Tremors 4, Back to Perfection.
Good movie.
I don't know if you and I have talked about Wicked. Did you see it? I don't know that first.
We talked a little bit about it. I gave you my take, which is it is weird for them to have tied in. So there were some weird parts of it. And a lot of it was around the changes they made to the stage musical, which I read about. And it's like every change they made, I disagreed with, right? So it's like they decided to really tie it into the 1939 Judy Garland movie, to the point that they had the characters from that movie kind of like seen in wide shot from behind going up the yellow brick road. There is a 2.5-hour stretch in the world of Oz where it suddenly becomes incredibly diverse.
Yeah.
And Bowen Yang fits in and Cynthia Erivo fits in. So it's like basically there's a 2.5. It's like goes from Oz being all white to an incredibly diverse and inclusive place back to being all white as soon as Dorothy kills the Wicked Witch of the West. It's weird. So that's the first thing. Honestly, I think this is a movie that could have just stood on its own as a 3-hour adaptation. That being said, it's not a movie made for me.
Yeah.
I watched it strictly because it was in the Oscars race. I think that, we have to remember the Return of the King was the Lord of the Rings movie that won all the gold, right? So there may be a thought that we want to give it to Anora because this, or the Oscar voters were thinking I can hold off on voting for Wicked on all this stuff next year because I know more of it's coming. But I want to say one more thing, which is, as an aspiring filmmaker myself and as someone who loves musicals and would ultimately, if you said to me, Liam, if you had a dream, what would it be? I would kind of explain the kind of musical I would want to make and direct. To see a mainstream big budget musical embraced by both the audience and the industry makes me really hopeful that maybe someday musicals are making a comeback. And as someone who loves musicals, I would actually be very happy about that.
Yeah, no, I like well done musicals. I think Russell Crowe aside, the Les Mis not live action, the Les Mis film I thought was fairly well done. And yeah, I like when it's done well. I think that my problem with Wicked was what I knew going into it was that it's 2 hours and 40 minutes, and they took a 2 hour and 40-minute stage show and broke it into 2 parts. So we're going to get 5 hours of this thing. And I didn't care about the plight of the talking animals and all the stuff that they really stretched out, because
Right.
by stretching it out, you take the best thing about it, the songs, and you make them much further apart. So I found it to be okay. You know what I did? I went with my wife because it was a movie she wanted to see. I pulled a Liam during that movie. I took a little.
That's it, dude. I don't have a girlfriend. I don't have a wife. And so therefore I watched it at home, and I took a 20-minute break. I actually stayed awake for the whole thing, which is a big thumbs up for me, by the way. But I was also able to take a long break, go to the bathroom, kind of like get a soda, just kind of like, okay, I don't have to sit here for 3 hours and watch this movie. But it was also, I got to say, it wasn't like that last Spider-Verse movie where I went in knowing it was only the first half of a story, and I was still so drawn in that I was bummed when it ended halfway through the story.
I did not realize it was going to end like that, Spider-Verse, and I was very annoyed because I was like, he's got like 10 minutes,
Yeah, and so there were just a lot of, I think also when you stretch a movie out like that to 5 hours, there's a lot of, you have to really be careful to balance everything so that even if you can't have like a third act tension coming out of the second act, that coming into the last part of the first half of the second act, there's still a lot of stuff you want to see resolved. And I was kind of like, if this second movie never comes out, I would be kind of okay with that.
Well, it comes out November 21st. I just looked it up in time for next year's Oscar race. And there is something to be said about the way that Return of the King got a cumulative Oscar for all of the Lord of the Rings stuff that went before. Well, in general, I try to usually have fun with Oscar night. I enjoy the telecasts.
I love it.
I've enjoyed the years that Jimmy Kimmel's hosted. The year that I remember the year that Ellen hosted was that I just remember having the feeling that, like, in her mind, she did okay, but she did okay for the rehearsal, but she would really nail it for the live show. But unfortunately, what aired was the live show. I mean, what aired was what she thought was the rehearsal.
Right.
I fucked up my statement, but you know what I'm saying. In general, it's fun, and I like when they mix it up. Jon Stewart's done a good job. Chris Rock's done a good job. And I love Conan. So that really was, it was a stacked deck, I think.
Look, I love the Oscars.
Yeah.
I love the pageantry of it. I don't ever watch the red carpet stuff because, gowns and interviews are not what draw me. But I do love seeing the most famous people in the world in that moment, all compelled to sit shoulder to shoulder. There's something to me that's like amazing about it. Even like in these days when celebrity is so cheapened and, like none of these people are larger than life anymore. It's like when I was a kid, I would be the only member of my family watching beginning to end because I just loved cutting to Jack Nicholson for no reason. Like just shit like, like.
I agree. Yeah.
And the new, like, I like learning who's who in the audience. And, I like the inside jokes and figuring out what they are. It's just like there's so much stuff about it that drew me when I was a kid to wanting to be a part of show business.
Yeah.
It wasn't my amazing good looks or
yeah. Well, no, I'm not agreeing with that. I think you're amazing good
Thank
looks.
you. No, I'm a behind the scenes guy and I'm dressed like it.
Look, the zenith that I've reached, I was showing off and flexing for Kaylee before. I've attended 4 Emmy Awards, and I can't believe that I was there for those, and it's only because of my wife. I don't expect to ever be at an Oscar, so I enjoy, maybe as a seat filler, which, by the way, would actually be probably a pretty cool gig. I'd love to be a seat filler.
It's so funny. A man never gets too old or too married to try to flex in front of a beautiful woman. It just is the way we are built.
Do you know what it is, Liam? Because you never know. All right, you never know when you're going to have to have flexed in front of
with Kaylee. I'm pretty sure the never part is
you're never,
never. But you're right.
She is looking for husband number 3. So everybody, make sure to head over to.
She's in Rochester, and that is a red flag.
But there's great people in Rochester, and we do appreciate Kaylee for being there. I had a lot of fun with her Murder Game podcast.
I loved her Murder Game podcast, and I love Rochester's closeness to Buffalo, which is a great city.
Well, there you go. And special thanks to Kaylee for being here. Special thanks to Eric Connor.
I shit on every place in the Northeast because I'm from there.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, look, I mean, you could talk about Queens. I could talk about New York. I have a ton of family from New Jersey. We cover all of it. That's
I
right.
met this really super interesting I'm sorry. I was about to take you.
No, go ahead. It's fine.
Super interesting Cuban actor who knew Pacino from American Buffalo, the
Right.
Mammoth play they were in.
Yeah.
And he was telling me all about how he prepped Pacino for his role in Scarface. And I did the shittiest, dude. I just like to fucking go for it, and I really have to stop. So he said that, and I said, "Oh, what did you give him his Cuban accent?" And he was very nice and laughed. And then he was like, "No, no, no." And then he told me the entire story, and I kept apologizing for basically just coming in hot because he's a nice guy, and he fucking knows what he's talking about. That's why I was late, by the way, because I ran into that guy. Talked to him for 20 minutes.
It was fine. I appreciate you staying so long. It all works out because I wasn't doing the show by myself at any point. I appreciated having all of you. If you in the audience haven't had enough Oscar talk, and I have more clips that I haven't shown, tomorrow, Tuesday, at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific, who are these broadcasters will be our second annual, but our annual Oscars wrap-up show. And my buddy Eric Zane is going to be unavailable. So I'm announcing here first that special
wait, hold on.
For that occasion will be my buddy Zia Anderson, who people know from the Chip Chipperson podcast. She'll be sitting in for Eric Zane, and she has not seen the Oscars nor most of the films. And I'm like, that's going to be perfect for what we're going to do. So you can check out my pal Zia and myself doing that over on the Who Are These Podcasts YouTube channel. And of course, that show is also available as an audio podcast. People here on the Bladtcast very familiar with Zia over the years, and used to do a lot of shows with her over at AfterBuzz TV. It's been more than a year since I've been on a stream with her, so I really kind of laid it on pretty thick. But also new for Zia, Liam, she'll be on a stream that I'm doing where people are actually watching, so that's going to be a little bit more what she's accustomed to. So excited to do that.
Can I tell you one more story about how shitty I am at networking with people?
Please, yes.
I went to a screening at the Academy Museum.
Mm-hmm.
It was the Italian movie that won the Oscar. God damn, Cinema Paradiso.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And my buddy and I left, and there was a dude with a Oscar lapel pin, and that means they're on the board of governors. And I was dressed very much like this, and I ran up to the guy and just started blabbing at him in the middle of this conversation with someone else. Anyway, I looked him up when I got home, and he's Mel Brooks' best friend. I was like, "Oh, I should stop."
Stop. But if you stopped, people wouldn't be able to find what's going on over at watchliam.com. What are they going to find over there, Liam?
March 15th. If you're still watching, God bless you. Thank you. Please come to my YouTube channel. You can go to watchliam.com. 2009, 15 years ago, I did a cancer benefit for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society of America. And I had Jim Gaffigan, I had Todd Barry, I had Kristen Schaal, who you might know from Bob's Burgers. So they have already graciously allowed me to share their sets from that night because the club taped this benefit. And I am talking to Triumph the Insult Comic Dog. I think he's going to let me do it, but no confirmation yet. That being said, follow him on Twitter or whatever, because his stories, he's been just telling nothing but behind the scenes stories about SNL and Conan for a while, and it's been amazing to follow him. That being said, regardless, you can also watch me do stand up on one of the worst nights for me performing wise, because I was in the middle of juggling 40 things, and I was about 6 months away from quitting drinking. So I was in an amazing headspace when I was on stage trying to make people laugh. But those guys killed. Watchliam.com. Oh, I Saturday, March 15th at, I believe it's going to be 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Whoa. And it will be about an hour. And if you can't make it, or you hate my comedy, or you hate me, please at least go to lls.org and donate. Everybody's lives are being touched by cancer now. And, we gotta support each other through this.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. And I don't know if you've left it up, but I did a show with Liam a couple weeks ago. People might be able to find that there. And I always enjoy doing whatever Liam throws at me. We have fun. We're gonna do
talk about
another
that.
stakeout. We're gonna do the Fred Durst movie. We've got it all coming up. Everything's coming up, Liam.
I had to take it down because I'm promoting this thing, and I have to have my YouTube channel look normal for the next 2 weeks.
That's probably fair.
And then
After
we're
that,
gonna get
we'll see.
after that. Yeah, we'll talk. I have an idea.
Well, that sounds good. Well, we can talk after. I appreciate that, Liam, and thank you as always. And of course, I want to remind everyone one more time to check out Who Are These Broadcasters on Tuesday at 1. Nope, sorry. I want to remind everybody to check out Who Are These Broadcasters at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific time. I will be doing more Oscar talk with my buddy Zia Anderson. First time as a co-host on that show, although technically she's our review girl. It's just been a minute since she's been on. So please check that out on the Who Are These Podcasts YouTube channel. That's tomorrow as we record it. Thank you so much to everybody. And we will see you next time on the Bladtcast.